Home Affairs Minister, I should say, Leon Schreiber says the electoral legislative framework must be urgently updated to create conducive conditions for multi-party governments in South Africa. Schreiber says the era of one-party governments has come to an end. He was addressing the Electoral Reform Conference in Boksburg today. It's taking place amid tensions in the Government of National Unity over the 2025 budget. Joining me now is Tselane, Executive Chairperson of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Tselane. Thanks very much for your time. We were talking to colleagues this morning when we were discussing this story among others. And I made a statement that there are probably as many views about what is wrong and what should change with regard to our electoral system as there are people gathered at that conference. Am I wrong, or was I wrong?
Good afternoon to you and to your viewers, and thank you very much for having me. Of course, you are correct that when you've got a project similar to this, you will definitely have different opinions coming from different sectors, particularly because this is a consultative meeting where various organizations are represented and all of them coming with different opinions and different views. And therefore, we are here to basically try to see as to whether we cannot actually begin to gravitate towards one position as South Africans.
Am I correct in saying that political parties tend to hold more or less similar views as opposed to your NGOs and academics and people like you, for example? Just broadly speaking, before we zoom in on a couple of specific issues.
It really depends. The political parties that are already represented in Parliament would more or less have similar opinions and on certain issues. But the so-called unrepresented political parties, in other words, those that still want to have access to representation in either national parliament or provincial legislatures, would obviously have different views depending on where they are coming from and the fact that they would like to also have access to the state power, whether it be at the provincial level or at the national level.
In fact, I remember at some point there was a feeling that those that are in already want to close the door behind them and make things a little difficult for those that want to go in. Let's canvass one of the issues or one of the highlights in the past of these reforms where certain people felt that South Africans should be allowed to vote directly for their own president or premier or even mayor for that matter.
Yeah, we have not as yet come to that level, but nevertheless, as you have clearly indicated, it is one of the issues that emerged from the research that was conducted by a group led by Professor Mcebisi Ntlejane. So we will see how eventually the political parties and everybody else who is here will view that recommendation. But essentially what we seem to be agreeing on is that instead of actually coming up with one option that we expect everybody to gravitate towards, there will be policy options which will basically be able to give advantages and disadvantages of various systems. So you might end up with about 3 or 5 options. And from those options, Parliament would have to take a decision based on the feasibility that would have been conducted in relation to all those options that would have been presented.
Take us through a few of those issues that you are most likely to gravitate towards one another on.
Look, as you've clearly indicated, the first option would obviously be that of direct representation as it happens in Namibia or other areas where the president is going to be elected directly by the various constituencies or the electorate and the premiers and probably the mayors. But there are other people who still feel that the current system of proportionality is still the best system in South Africa. But we've got to try to find mechanism to include the independence as indicated previously by the Constitutional Court. So we will see as to whether there is going to be an agreement on the development of constituencies in order to be able to give the independents direct representation and to be able to participate properly, not like the current system, or whether that option would actually going to be a mixed option. But also, even in terms of the proportional representation, it still depends on whether you're going to have a system where you've got a closed party system, such as the one that we have, where a political party decides a list on its own, or whether you are going to have primaries where basically each political party will present its list to the constituency, and the constituency will then rank those individuals who would have been chosen or nominated by a political party to be in their list. So there are various options. We are still really at a very early stage. And once we've gone through all those other processes, it is going to be a much more clearer view in terms of what opinion eventually will prevail. But like I've indicated, the intention is not really to come with one opinion that will then be presented to Parliament and say, this is one view that we all agree to. But there will be various options, and based on those options, Parliament, as a decision maker, will then make a decision in terms of which option they think would be good for South Africa.
There was also the issue of voter turnout and how to address that, because as we have been having lower voter turnouts, young people in particular not being so keen in many instances to actually go out there and vote. So obviously it does have a bearing on both the credibility and the legitimacy of any election. And one of the propositions was that perhaps voting should be made compulsory for adults.
Yeah, that issue has actually been raised, but it has not really been canvassed properly. There is a view that says that the fact that we've got low voter turnout is as a result of the proliferation of political parties, and that people are becoming despondent about having to vote for so many political parties that are there, and that perhaps there should be some kind of a limit or a process that is going to limit the number of the political parties that are participating in the process. And then there are others also who are saying, in fact, the political parties themselves are the ones who are discrediting the process, in the sense that people no longer believe in the political parties. So if the electorate is beginning to be despondent about the capacity of the political parties to carry out their responsibilities and to represent them, then it means it's important that we begin to look into the nature of representation that is there. An issue that has arisen as a result of this is also the issue of accountability, to say that the majority of the political parties, once they have chosen their people who then represent them, there is no way that the electorate can actually be able to interact with that particular process, no matter how dissatisfied they are with their public representatives. So those are some of the issues that are really being canvassed here, and we'll see to what extent the delegates here begin to move to a particular direction.
Mr. Tselane, let me thank you for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Tselane, who of course is attending, he's from the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. He's one of hundreds of people attending that conference at Emperor's Palace in Boksburg, Ekurhuleni, where all matters election are being discussed. How do we reform our electoral system to make it more responsive to the needs of ordinary South Africans?